Welcome into a special edition of the Jordy Culotta Show, live here on this Wednesday, September 1st. First in the month of this fall season as football season is upon us. LSU taking off tomorrow for their trip to Los Angeles. They will take on UCLA Saturday afternoon inside of the Rose Bowl. The Culotta Show will be there. We're looking forward to our travel day tomorrow. It's good to be here in the bunker of the undisclosed location. We are
double
heading out.
bunker.
We are double bunkered up. Go ahead and try and find us, Suits. It's coming up today. We will check in with Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois, who is down in the teeth of Hurricane Ida in Thibodaux, Louisiana. We will talk to him.
Some of his stuff.
Crazy, man.
Wild.
Crazy. And then we will also talk to Nick Underhill, who is stationed over in Dallas with the New Orleans Saints. We'll ask him how creative they're going to have to be to get to this 53-man roster, the initial 53-man roster, just because of some of the injured players they're going to have to house on the roster. So there's lots to get to here on the Jordy Culotta Show. We'll hear from all the SEC coaches this morning. The SEC teleconference, first of the season, is coming up today. Ed Ogeron usually leads off that crew, so we'll talk to him, or we'll hear from him. Coming, I don't know what they're going to do about his radio show tonight. I don't know how they're going to do that. I'd imagine that they're going to do it because they have to clear the spots. But
well, that's when you get into the paid programming and all of that sort of thing. Whenever everybody has all those spots locked in, like they have to run something. I couldn't imagine that would you just call in.
I don't know.
It's going to be not my problem, dude.
Yeah, right. It is going to be interesting to see how this.
Good God, that place.
See how this works. LSU. I saw where the 18-wheeler has started to make its way to Los Angeles, to Pasadena. Tiger One.
Is it Tiger One?
I think it's Tiger One.
Yes. It always has a presence on social media, and it's just whenever you see that thing going, dude, you know it's close to
it's
football season, dude. We're here.
I mean, the equipment is en route.
They're playing.
They're going to have to do this.
They're going to have to play a game.
They're going to have to kick this thing off. You had a chance to listen to Chip Kelly's press conference yesterday. Lots of respect for LSU. Obviously, some of the headline players like Derek Stingley Jr. and Kayshon Boutte, he's got a lot of respect for. But he does speak with a quiet tone of confidence. Like you and I were talking before. This is his fourth team in Westwood. If you can't be confident now, when would you ever be confident about a squad that you can roll out there? There's so many returning starters. I mean, they've got super seniors on this team. The term of a super senior is kind of a fifth or even now a sixth-year guy to some of the guys that have been granted extra time due to the COVID season. So, I mean, he has got a lot of maturity on his roster. And I think it's always something to be said about the difference of a 22-year-old young man blocking or trying to get around an 18, 19-year-old five-star. It doesn't matter really how good you are as an 18 or 19-year-old. Once that 22-year-old puts that grown man strength on you, it's just different. I thought that really and truly for a long time during that decade run of Alabama's dominance over LSU in that series, that was one of the primary factors of difference.
Well, their ability to bring people back.
Alabama was getting people back while LSU had people leaving that weren't ready to leave, much less even come back and try to get more experience in college football. So, I mean, the difference was that Alabama was playing with 20, 21, 22-year-old guys while LSU was still trying to break freshmen, sophomores, youngsters into play. And, I mean, if there is one sense of advantage for UCLA, it would be that they have the far more upperclassmen filled roster.
And it's crazy to even think about that because LSU's returning so many starters in terms of what's on the offensive line. LSU's bringing so many people back that you would think it would be an advantage LSU, but it really isn't, just because of the way that, I know we've talked about this, we've harped on some of these things before, but their ability to not bring any quality depth into the offensive line and to see what UCLA has coming back, that is a huge tipping point in the game to be able to have that experience. But once you get down to, okay, if somebody goes down, UCLA is still coming. Like, they still have experience. They still have people coming into the game. They have an experienced, like you said, it's Chip Kelly's fourth year with this team, and it feels like he knows they're good. And I don't know if LSU or maybe we haven't quite realized that They're coming. It's not going to be. I always go to this whenever it comes to games I'm not sure about. Go look at the spread. Vegas knows that 3-point spread is much closer than you would think it should be.
Advantage.
Right. That means it would break even. Like if you played at a neutral site, it would be a 0-point spread. It would be just a pick 'em. So for them to be able to,
LSU's the favorite.
I know. Oh, okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
So it would be a 6-point spread.
So it'd be a 6-point spread on a neutral field.
Yes. But I still think that even that 3 points, it still feels like it should be more than that, and it's not. So I think that UCLA has a very good team coming in. They know it. Vegas knows it. And I think it's just going to be an interesting matchup.
I think the matchup of the day is going to be LSU's defensive line going up against UCLA's offensive line. When you speak about those terms, the maturity of the roster, UCLA, a lot of that maturity is within the trenches of the offensive line. A lot of those guys that came back, I mean, they've got 7 of their top 7 offensive linemen from last season were back. And are back on this team. When you think about LSU's defensive line, Ali Gay, Andre Anthony, Glenn Logan, right off the top, jump off. I mean, those are experienced, older guys that have been in the program for a while. Now, Ali Gay came from a junior college, but, I mean, he's an older player. But Andre Anthony, you think about how long he's been here. Glenn Logan is a fifth-year guy now playing defensive line. I don't know if he'll play this week, just dealing with the injury that he sustained during training camp. But when you talk about just being mature on the roster, those 2 units I think is going to be a really nice battle all day when you just talk about these 2 groups being experienced, having age, veteran leadership, all that stuff. It's going to be fantastic to watch those 2 units go at it. Remember, daily here, we're brought to you by Go Chevrolet, GEAUX Chevrolet.com. Get in and stop in and see them. Laplace, Louisiana, obviously they were very much affected by the storm that came through. They moved their inventory. Their offices and service center have been hit. They're going to get that back up and operating for you. And then, of course, Go Express Auto Sales, the used car lot over here in Baton Rouge on the corner of Florida Boulevard and Sherwood Forest, where you can stop in and shop the models there. We're going to talk to Nick Underhill about the New Orleans Saints. Saints are heading down the stretch here of getting to their final 53-man roster. We'll talk to Underhill, who is stationed over in Dallas, Texas, with New Orleans, about what has to happen here for the Saints get to 53, and then what's the next month going to look like in covering the New Orleans Saints, as it looks like they will be housed in Dallas for the next upcoming weeks and possibly could open their season, not this Sunday, but next versus Green Bay. In Dallas, in Jerry World. So we'll wait and see or get the latest from Nick Underhill coming up here in about 45 minutes. He'll stop in here at 11 o'clock, and we'll talk to Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois coming up at 10:30 this morning here, 10:45, just about the latest and what he's had going on. Obviously, he's been down there in Thibodaux and dealing with just the effects of Hurricane Ida. If you've kept up with him on social media, I mean, he is he's taken the brunt of it. He took they took a couple of haymakers from Ida over the weekend, and we will talk to Chef coming up here in about 45 minutes.
It's just wild. Minutes. Yeah, it's just wild that he was like you said, in the thick of it, and all you do is pull out your phone. There's nothing else you can do. It's just film it while you can. You're just like, look at what's coming in right now, and you just, even for Chef Jean-Paul, who is probably one of the most Southern people we've ever talked to, even he was like almost in awe of what was happening around him. And it's just so funny to me that people are still like, all right, I guess I have to get my phone out to show this to people. And Chef Jean-Paul is like, I guess we'll be okay. I have no clue at this point. But he was right in the teeth of it. And for people that weren't as affected, it almost helps to see that kind of stuff, just so you're like, oh my God, it is disaster around you, because some people didn't get touched. I'm lucky to have, internet or whatever, and to see it that close and see the power of it all. And for someone like him who's lived through all of them, to be able to pull out his phone and be like, oh my God, look what's happening around us. Like, all right, I'll holler at y'all later. It's crazy. And the fact that he wants to join the show is even better.
We played the clip yesterday from, we got the guy's name, Raymond Searney was the guy who had the footage from Golden Medal. from Golden Meadow with the tatted knuckles up, that lived through
all of it,
Hurricane Ida, and saw it just in its face. I mean, he was standing in the front line, the absolute front line of Louisiana's coast to Hurricane Ida. I mean, still, when I watch that footage, it just seems surreal. I mean, it's like, how is this place holding up? How is this place holding on to the foundation of whatever it's sitting on? I mean,
who built this?
Amazing. I mean, it felt like that thing was going to parachute into the air. I mean, just get swept out into the. I mean, it was like you were watching somebody on the moon that was going to get blown into the ozone. Like, if he would have stepped out into that, you were like, you'll never see this guy ever again. Yeah, I mean,
you're
it was
toast.
It was surreal to see the footage that Sierne lived through. And if you have not seen it, get over to our Instagram account. As we posted that up yesterday, of the footage from Sierne just sitting in his place down on the coast of Louisiana as Hurricane Ida makes landfall, and it's the most humbling piece of footage I've ever seen, just from Mother Nature. And I've seen, being from Louisiana, I mean, you've seen some of the worst case disasters when you think about storms and hurricanes and aftermath and wind damage and flooding.
Well, I wonder if he knows that he's gone viral, because I'm sure he posted that and he was like, well, I don't have internet, I don't have anything. I'm sure he's going to wake up and be like, oh shit, my clip's everywhere. Like, everything that I filmed is on the Jordy Culotta Show Instagram. It's all over the place. Like, it's running on every news outlet ever, and he has no way to know.
I got to imagine he thought to himself, if this gets out,
help me.
If this gets out of my phone, if it gets out of my possession, this is going to be must-watch television. I mean, this is going to be unreal to see. I mean, it was just the absolute front line of what was going on there. All right, so a different time slot here for you this morning. I appreciate you bouncing around and finding us and sticking with us. We will get back to our 7 and 9 schedule tomorrow morning before we board the plane to L.A. We'll be out there. We'll be sending back pictures, videos, and some images of what's happening there. And then hopefully by next week when we get back into town, everything over at the UDL will be powered back up, and we can kind of business as usual from the Culotta Show and get into a regular game week of preparation with our regular guests, our regular interaction and back and forths with people. So hopefully by the time we get back on Sunday evening from Los Angeles and then get ready to go on Monday morning, we'll be all powered up and juiced up and ready to roll.
I mean, testament to you to keep this thing rolling, because it would be easy to not do this. And for you to, keep the train rolling for the people is very impressive. And I'm glad we're doing it, just because, people, like we said yesterday, people need a little bit of a distraction if they can, to be able to put up like a podcast or a social anything, just to give them something to listen to while they're going through some of the things that you don't want to have to deal with any of this, So I'm glad we're doing this and happy to help the people.
The more and more the days go on, Urban Meyer looks lost coaching the NFL game. Have you seen the latest trap that he stepped into?
No.
You see this? He was talking about getting down to his 53-man roster, and he was talking about some of the things that he was looking at in making those decisions, and he said publicly that they were checking vaccination status, whether you were vaccinated or not. And I don't know if he meant to say it, but he said it publicly, and now he has kicked up an NFL internal investigation. I don't know what that's going to bring out, but it is just more of a sign that Urban Meyer here on his latest experiment, how tough it is to transition from college to the NFL. I mean, Chip Kelly, who LSU will face off against this weekend, has been one of the casualties of college to the NFL, as he coached both in Philadelphia and San Francisco. If you remember, Philadelphia gave up everything to try and go get him from Oregon. Jeffrey Lurie and that ownership made a very aggressive run at Chip Kelly while he was experiencing so much success in Eugene, and then it didn't work out in Philadelphia, and San Francisco gave him a little bit of time.
Run. Yeah.
What was it, 3 years, 2 years?
I'm looking up right now.
In San Francisco?
It was just, it's so great because he started off so well in the NFL, and it just goes to show how hard there's so many landmines you have to navigate in the NFL as opposed to college football. Because if you're Urban Meyer, you don't have to ever step foot in front of the public like this with this statement if you're in college football. Like, you never have to do this. There's somebody else that'll walk out in front of you or tell you what to say. And I'm sure that's the way it goes in the NFL, but it's so easy and it gets so publicized in the NFL if you say anything like this that it just everybody picks up and runs with it. You're one of 32 as opposed to one of how many college football teams there are in the country. Like, I understand he was under the spotlight when he was at Florida and at Ohio State, but in the NFL, they look for anything to find and hook onto and make a story out of, and that just seems to be the hardest part for these college coaches to navigate.
Adam Schefter reported this morning over at ESPN that the Jaguars will be among the 5 teams with the most unvaccinated players.
Jesus. Oh, it's Florida.
Yeah, it caused Jacksonville to release a statement on Wednesday morning saying availability is one of the many factors taken into account when making roster decisions. We have vaccinated and unvaccinated players on our roster, and no player was released because of their vaccination status. Ultimately, decisions are based on a player's ability to help the Jaguars win. We educate our players and respect personal decisions as it pertains to the vaccine. We want to keep our players, staff, families safe as we comply with protocols related to both health and safety competition on game days. Meyer got into a little bit of trouble yesterday when he said everyone was considered. That was part of the considerations. Production, let's start talking about this. And also, is he a vaccinated guy or not? Can I say that? That was a decision maker.
Oh, God, can I say
it
that?
Was certainly a decision. It was certainly
right after put my foot in my mouth.
In consideration. It was almost like he looked at his SID and was like, can I say that?
I
mean,
the
guy was probably like, had his butt puckered about this tight and thought to himself, no, man, you can't say that.
I gotta tweet something.
Yeah, we're gonna have to now go into emergency mode and clean up.
You're telling me Cam Newton's not gonna play for the Jaguars?
Exactly. So it was interesting to see the latest hot water that Urban Meyer has stepped into. I thought he looked lost versus New Orleans on the sideline. I thought that he looked like he was on the edge, kind of very, very anxious over there. I mean, to me, it was familiar in the look and the feel that he was putting off through the television of, I'm just a little confused. I'm not sure of myself. I'm not as sure of myself as I usually am in football. And there's just a lot that I'm looking at that I'm a little confused on right now. I thought was kind of the vantage point that I saw Meyer in. And then something like this where, I mean, in a press conference setting where you're looking around and saying, can I say that? You don't want that in the public. I mean, that's almost as embarrassing as saying that, they made decisions on vaccination status. So we'll ask.
It's also, it goes to show for, like, when you look at rookies that go into the NFL, they talk about the game speed, and they're like, oh, my God, this is a little bit faster than what I'm used to. It seems like that's happened to Urban Meyer as a coach, where he's looking around going, all of this is very fast. And he tried to build a staff around that where he brought in veteran guys that were able to, that he could look to for guidance almost. And it seems like all of it he's done has backfired so far.
Yeah, no, it has. It just doesn't look like anything has made a lot of sense, that nothing has really kind of worked out. I mean, it kind of seems like he's throwing stuff up against the wall to see what happens. His roster's not that good.
Is that what the difference is?
I think it is. I mean, I would think that for a guy like Urban Meyer,
you can always have confidence that people you brought in terms of,
to me, personalities like Meyer and Saban are neutralized in the NFL because they're so dominant in recruiting, right? Like Jimmy Johnson's the only one, and I think the ghost that everybody is still to a degree chasing in trying to bring that personality to the NFL and it working the way it did with Jimmy Johnson. I mean, Johnson kind of made the same type of moves in the NFL that he made in college, where he was able to kind of build his roster the way he wanted it to look. You rarely see that from a head coaching standpoint, and Johnson was looking at it like recruiting. Saban and Meyer, in my opinion, even Chip Kelly to a degree, the reason that they really stand out in college football, yeah, they're bright, they've got good schemes, they run a really good program, but they're 3 of the best recruiters in college football. I think Saban and Meyer are probably as good as the sport has produced over the last 15 to 20 years in recruiting. How does that really help you when you get to the NFL, other than trying to convince an NFL free agent or having the opportunity to really play with a lot of draft picks in some certain situations. I mean, that really, to me, that skill set is almost lost in the NFL. I mean, then you take the opposite approach. A guy like Joe Brady, who despises recruiting, can't get over the fact that he's in some Washington, D.C. airport over the holidays chasing some 17-year-old when he could be in the film room breaking down schemes and drawing up game plans for future opponents. He would rather just be in an NFL building all day, working with the best, the brightest, and scheming these guys to play at the top of their game. I think, some of these personalities that make the jump from college to the NFL, a lot of their advantage and the reason why they stand out on the college level is because they're able to get all the players. I mean, they have a personality and a recruiting method that is just not really rivaled. It's unrivaled.
Second to none.
Yeah, second to none. I mean,
yeah, you're able to bring in 4- and 5-star guys every at the flip of a hat, literally, because that's what they do when they go to the recruiting table. But that ability to know what you have on your roster every time, there's so much more. And maybe it's just a time thing. Maybe Urban Meyer needs a little time to understand what's on his roster and what he needs in the NFL. Because if you look at it, Chip Kelly went through the same thing wherever he was brought into the NFL because he was an offensive mastermind. Like, that was his calling card. He was a genius when it comes to play calling. Urban Meyer's in that same boat. So when you have to bring in not only your scheme, but you have to bring in players to match it, and you have to do it through the draft as opposed to let me bring in 20 guys at a time that I can do through college football where I know exactly where they're going to fit in, and I can have 2 years with them to mold them, to, fit them into my scheme. The thing in the NFL is you don't have that time. It is a zero-sum game. You are at the mercy of the media. What she's figuring out right now is that you can't say anything that will not get you in trouble. And then it is just a results-based business where it doesn't matter what you did in college football, it's what you do in the NFL. The slate is wiped clean, and he has no skins on the wall in the NFL, and it's just wild because everything that I think of about Urban Meyer is he is a dominant football coach.
No, you're right. I mean, it's to me, a lot of those guys get neutralized at the NFL level, and you look up in college football, and you almost wonder why would a guy like Meyer, who has really understood and dominated the college game like he's had, have an opportunity like he had at the University of Texas, it seems like, come up. Jimmy Johnson, in fact, in an interview with Dan Le Batard, confirmed that he and Urban Meyer are really tight, that Meyer had brought Jimmy Johnson up to Jacksonville's training camp for a couple of days to speak to the team and kind of give his evaluation of his roster. But in that interview, if you haven't heard it, you need to go check it out. Dan Le Batard and Friends sits down with Jimmy Johnson. Johnson confirms that Meyer turned down the Texas job. I think everybody speculated that. Everybody was sure that happened, but that was the confirmed, that he had it on the table. I'd imagine that Urban Meyer probably told Texas what the contract was going to look like. Texas wasn't telling Urban Meyer what the contract. I mean, he was able to probably dictate the terms of whatever he wanted it to look like in Austin. And, he goes to the NFL, and I agree with you. I mean, he's right back to in the mode of trying to earn respect. He's got no respect in that league as far as what he's accomplished at college football. In college football, that means nothing to those guys.
And you go look at the health problems that he's allegedly had in college football. These are going to be tenfold in the NFL. This is already the hardest job he's ever had. And when you look at what he did in college football and how that was taxing on him, I'm sure some of that was managing the roster at Florida, which was an absolute shit show when you go back and look at it. We had no idea that was going on. And then you see everything that he was putting up with and having to deal with, and he has these health problems. All of this is magnified now that he's in the NFL. It's wild to think, and it goes. I think the bigger point here is that it goes to show what Chip Kelly might be capable of at a UCLA. Whenever look at the time he's had. You said 4 years. He's been at UCLA for 4 years, and there's really been no spotlight on him until now. Whenever he's kind of wanted it, they play They scheduled a week 1 game, LSU, UCLA in Pasadena. Like, they're doing all this because I think he knows that, all right, finally,
You got to take that step.
he feels comfortable in that role now, as opposed to, all right, I was bouncing around from Philadelphia where they started off unbelievably good, and he had Nick Foles go, 21 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he was his scheme was what people were chasing, essentially. And then he bounces to San Francisco, and it doesn't work out there. And then he settles at UCLA, and it's just this little sleeping giant that he's kind of building, and they haven't been good. Shout out, Mom. Yeah. It's just been building, and now it seems like they're on the precipice of something to be able with. They think they're an 8, 9, 10-win team.
Some news coming out this morning from UCLA, LSU's game. As we said this morning, Ed Orgeron meeting on the SEC teleconference with the rest of the league coaches, giving an update on his Week 1 game versus UCLA. Star freshman Malik Neighbors going to be out a couple of weeks. Will not play this weekend. Shea Dixon had it first. Orgeron confirmed that this morning on the SEC teleconference, stating that Neighbors will not play this weekend. He also said that he had good news on Ty Davis-Price, John Emery, Elias Ricks, and Derek Stingley Jr. as they were all practicing in Houston this week. So it looks like most of the roster will be ready to roll. That sucks for Malik Neighbors because, routinely when you would ask about those true freshman wide receivers, he was the name that rolled off the tongue first from everybody that was talking about what they were watching out there. Now, collectively, a very impressive group, and by all accounts, this injury is not going to keep him out throughout the duration of the season. He will have an opportunity to get into the lineup and play at some point here over the next couple of weeks. You just hate to see the setback for the freshman going on the pace and on the trajectory that he was on during training camp into the first week of preparation, and now here going into game 1 having the setback of the injury and not going to be able to play. But I still expect to see some more of those freshmen, whether it is Brian Thomas or Chris Hilton or Jack
Bash.
What
does. It opens the door for Brian Thomas, right? Because they were kind of mentioned like lock and key together. That was Brian Thomas, and then it would be Malik Neighbors right after that. Like, he was making waves in these scrimmages to where it's like, oh, is it going to be Malik Neighbors instead of Brian Thomas? So now, I mean, this is the conversation that you have to keep having, is who fills that second role for LSU on offense in terms of, like, obviously, you know who Kayshon Boutte is and what he's going to bring to the team, and everybody knows that. And it's been, all right, who's going to fill up, who's going to step up and take that second position? And Malik Neighbors was right there. So this is almost a detrimental blow to how LSU has to scheme themselves to fill that void, because it seemed like it would have been Malik Neighbors. It was going to be Brian Thomas. And I've always thought this, and I think it's not necessarily all right, fill position 2. It's what do they do well and plug them in and let them do that when they're in the game. And Malik Neighbors seemed to kind of have the all-around build as opposed to a Brian Thomas or a Chris Hilton, where they're kind of stretch the field, just be electric out there. And Malik Neighbors seemed to have like the most polished game coming in.
Neighbors is the most physical ready.
Right.
Physically, he's the most ready to step onto an SEC stage and play immediately. He's got the probably the fiercest mentality. He's got that dog in him, you know what I mean, that they look for. They all have that competitive side to them that wants to get them on the field. I always thought you were going to see Brian Thomas early on, especially in red zone packages. Anytime the ball moves inside the 20-yard line of the opponent, I expect Thomas to be on the field just because of the advantage he gives you in the jump ball situation. He's tall, he's long, he's lanky, and he is, really a very high-skilled basketball player. If you've gone back and watched him play over the last couple of seasons at Walker, I mean, he was the 5A state champion MVP of the game as a freshman in that game, and he was dominant. But I always expected to see him as far as the red zone packages go, just because of the advantage that he gives you in the jump ball situation. Now with Neighbors going down, because I thought Neighbors was probably going to be on the field pretty early.
Me too.
Look for Deion Smith. I think Deion Smith just kind of cracks the door for him to get on the field, because I think that you have a package already implemented for Thomas and Besh. I think Besh is on the field probably within the first 2 series of the game offensively. And depending on how you start, he may start the game. If you start into a 3-4 wide situation and you want a tight end on the field, 80 might be on. I mean, Besh might start the game. And then, Chris Hilton, we don't know where he may fit in early, but he fits in. He's going to play. I mean, he's just too good of an athlete. Another one that has that mentality of anytime you challenge him, you're going to get the best out of him.
Is there a Devontae Lee situation that you see playing out where, you saw the highlights of him playing in the scrimmage, but just a kind of a veteran guy now at this point that maybe this is where he steps up and he finds that role because he's talented as hell, but they haven't found a role for him, but maybe this opens the door to all right, you're going to see him on the field.
Well, all those guys have opportunities. Jeray Jenkins, John Trey Kirkland.
You're going to see Jeray Jenkins out there. He's going to play.
Yeah, Trey Palmer. I mean, all of those guys are going to have their chances. And Devontae Lee, it seems like, had really good opportunities bust up for him here in training camp, and he answered it. He was able to stay on the field and make plays. So, yeah, I think all those cats will have opportunities in the passing game. It'll be anxious to see what they do at the running back spot with both of those veterans healthy, with Ty Davis-Price.
Are we sure?
Back. Well, I mean, he said it this morning.
Well, I'd obviously he has to say that at this point because when you look back, they had the Trey Bradford smoke, and they were obviously trying to bring in him and what it is, it's smoke. We don't know exactly what the situation was, but has anybody figured out that situation? Is Trey Bradford just not going to play football this year?
I don't know
Where
if you're
is
counting on anything that Bradford would bring in at this point. I mean, there's
right,
just
but
too
no,
much.
I'm just saying, so he's not with Oklahoma. He's just in the portal? Or
I don't know that. I don't know that.
But that's what I think is bizarre is the fact that he left the team and then they were like, all right, maybe he's coming to LSU, maybe he's not. And he's just waiting in the wind when you have an LSU that doesn't really know what they're doing at running back, it seemed. So obviously I think they wanted to do that quickly if they were going to bring him in, and now there's no point to do it to get him ready for UCLA. That's a non-starter. There's no way he's going to play. So you have to worry about Ty Davis-Price if he's healthy, because if you're Ed Orgeron, you have to say that he looks good, because otherwise it's John Emery and then it's a cavalcade of freshmen. So for him to announce that Ty Davis-Price might be ready to play or is ready to play is just, I don't believe exactly what he's saying at this point, because he has to say that, because it sounds way better to be able to go into UCLA and say, I have 2 junior running backs that have played football before that are ready to go than to say, I'm not sure where Ty Davis-Price is right now.
Yeah, I think TDP is the guy. I think they've maintained in giving him the 1 reps, and I think they've tried to really get him healthy for this trip. So, look, Orgeron is as transparent as honest as a Division I football coach as you'll find. I mean, he gives you more information in pregame than any other coach in the game. In fact, there was somebody out of the LSU recruiting department that came over from a rival SEC school, and he told me when he got here that they would routinely listen to the weekly Ed Orgeron interview on the radio because he would always give you something.
They put that much stock in it?
Because he would always give you something. It would either be some type of personnel package in which they were including somebody, or it would be some type of personnel package where they were missing somebody. So, he's got that reputation around the league where he's not biting his tongue. He's not really giving you the coach speak in the lead up of, hey, everybody's good to go. He kind of gives you a transparent of,
he's
Malik Neighbors is not playing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Now, you can take Malik Neighbors off the board if you're UCLA.
You don't have to worry about it. And I guess you could say it almost opposite of what I was just thinking, is that now you could have kept Ty Davis-Price in the shadows and said, look, I'm not sure where he's going to be, and then start him. And instead you say, look, he's ready to go. It's almost like Coach O is so worried about keeping the fan base up to date and informed, because he knows it's almost like he's always coaching for his job, is what it seems like. He always wants to give you information to let you know that, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm a part of it's like he's a part of the fan base. If if he was somebody that had inside information, he would be the first one to text you.
Yeah.
And be like, look, I just found this out.
Billy Neighbors is hurt.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, he can't wait until run to the microphone with information, which is so bizarre. But it also is, I mean, that's what LSU fans want. It's a little bit of transparency, but it's just a part of, you could tell he grew up as a fan of LSU football because he wants to tell everybody what's going on all of the time.
Kieran Mott asks, who's going to return punts and kickoffs? I'd imagine that you'll see Derek Stingley Jr., the first back on punt return. If it's not Stingley, it'll be Trey Palmer. I think that you'll probably see Palmer back on kickoffs with some running back combination, whether it's John Emery, Corey Kiner, maybe TDP, somebody back there from a running back standpoint that gives them an opportunity.
Devontae Lee.
Maybe.
I'm talking about he's just so thick that he might be a good, lead guy to lead for Trey Palmer, who I think will be on kickoff. I don't see anybody other than Derek Stingley Jr. ever returning punts for LSU as long as he's here.
Watch out for Palmer.
Only because, well, I only say that because if the offense is good, they'll go back to the formula where it's just catch it, like fair catch it and catch it, because he has the best hands on the team without a doubt in terms of catching and fielding punts and kickoffs. Like, there's no worry there. He's only dropped, he's had one fumble his entire career. It was against Auburn.
Yeah.
And that was it. And that was on a return.
He picked it off.
Yeah, and he picked up the next play.
Yeah.
So that's why I think whenever you just talk about ball security, he's going to be the guy back on punt returns because he's so comfortable doing it. He's such at ease back there. It's something that is not easy to do whenever you have to look up, look down, and try to catch a punt and field anything and make a move after that. He'll be the guy to be on punt returns the remainder of the year, I'd imagine.
We were talking coaches. We were talking Urban Meyer.
Wait. Why did you say Trey Palmer like that? Do you think he'll be back there?
At some point. I think if there's concern about Stingley like this
just
week,
health-wise?
Yeah, like he didn't practice as much as they probably wanted him to. He's been down nursing an injury. That they feel as confident in Palmer that they do in Stingley. I mean, Palmer is game-breaking, bro. I mean, he's a game-breaker. He can't get it every week. He's got to be consistent. I mean, that's his scouting report is he's a home run hitter. Guys, I mean, he is a
1 for 4.
Absolutely can change the scoreboard every time he touches the ball. But you just don't know when you can count on him to be out there. And once you can start counting on him and trusting him, I would put my money on Trey Palmer as being the second wide receiver on just talent alone. Like, if it was just skill set and talent and you didn't know, like, I don't have to bet on availability. I don't have to bet on him being consistent. I just bet on the talent
player.
And the raw talent and what I see. Give me 33.
Where is this coming from? Because look, I'm not a Trey Palmer hater. I want them all to do well, but what has Trey Palmer done that you've seen aside from one punt return against Northwestern State that makes him this second name always mentioned? Because
was it a punt return or was it a kickoff return?
It was a punt return. I think it was a punt return.
Punt return?
Yeah. But that seems to be like the only thing that people register when they talk about Trey Palmer, because it looked electric when he was a freshman, but now he's going into his third year, essentially, and I haven't seen anything to where I would be like, oh, Trey Palmer's the guy.
Well, I mean, if you just look at him naturally, his bounce, the way he runs, the way he catches, the way that he does all of that, he just looks like he's a big-time player. Then you see the ball in his hand on a punt return, and you see his explosive ability. Growing up, he was the point guard, the shortstop, the quarterback, the center fielder. He was the best athlete on every team he ever played on. And to me, those guys, the Corey Websters of the world, the best athletes on their team out of their city, usually when you find the spot, Michael Clayton, when you find a spot for them, they succeed.
Naturally progress.
Yes, they're just too good. They're just a click or two better than everybody else they're going against. And to me, Palmer checks those boxes. I think he is.
Well, you could say the same thing about John Trey Kirkland. Like that,
John Trey Kirkland has had his opportunities. John Trey Kirkland has been on the field. John Trey Kirkland has not been hurt. He's been week in, week out. He's been on the field, and there's been games where he's made really big plays and he's had a really good game. But then there's been a 3 or 4 game stretch where you just don't even hear from him. Like, you don't even know that he's even in the game. Trey Palmer's not dressed out. You know what I mean? Like, he's one week he's dressed out, the next week he's not. And look, the coaches will tell you, best ability is availability.
And
he's just not
John
available.
Emery. Like, all of these guys have all of the skills in the world, and it's so bizarre that LSU can't seem to get these guys on the field. Like, they try to play John Emery, and he pops every now and again. It's a little frustrating because they've recruited all of what you would want them to get. You want to get the Trey Palmers. You want to get the John Emerys. I mean, you know the story of Coach O sitting down with John Emery after the Georgia game and talking to him for an hour with his parents outside of the game. Like, they were coming from the front steps of Tiger Stadium to where he was trying that hard to recruit John Emery because he was the number 2 running back in the country. Yeah. And now you can't decide when you're going to play him or not. Like, some of these things are very frustrating in terms of looking at the talent that LSU has brought in and finding a fit for them. Like, there should be a Trey Paul. I know it happens at every college football program, but these are two almost, it looks like swings and misses maybe with a John Emery, where it's like, what are we doing here? Why can't we get him on the field? What's not clicking for a John Emery and a Trey Palmer, where you need these guys to step up this year?
Hebert's Specialty Meats brings you the Jordy Culotta Show, home of the original deboned stuffed chicken. It is owned and operated by True Cajuns. It started down there in Maurice, outside of Lafayette, now with locations here in Baton Rouge on Jefferson Highway and out on Highway 73 in Ascension Parish. If you are looking for the best selections, if you need something to cook for the next couple of days, I tell you all the time, the stuffed chicken is something that you could go home, throw in the oven for an hour and a half, and have something to chew on for the next couple of days. So it's great to fill up you and the family. Stop in and see them, abearsmarkets.com, online. They are in Prairieville. They're in Baton Rouge. They're all over South Louisiana. You can find them online at abearsmarkets.com. Hebert's Markets, specialty meats here. Stop in, see the great selections inside of the freezer. Take some home tonight, whether it is ribeyes or steaks or hamburgers or, like we tell you, the deboned stuffed chicken. Stop in and check out Hebert's Specialty Meats, proud supporter here of the Jordy Culotta Show. We'll check in Thibodaux in next here with Jean-Paul Bourgeois, see what he's got going on here as the chef, of course, in the teeth of the storm over the last couple of days. We'll ask him how he is making headway on getting back to normalcy down there, and just how bad Ida was from the front lines down there in Thibodaux, Louisiana. Next, coming up here on the Jordy Culotta Show.
Like, he's going to be able to give such a good perspective. It's going to be Ida heavy, I would imagine, not too much like food conversations, maybe what you can eat or whatever during a hurricane and do all that stuff. But I feel like he's going to have a very unique perspective of what actually Ida did if you weren't affected.
Yeah, a very good point of view.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we'll talk to him next here on the Jordy Culotta Show.
Gearing up for spring and summer down here in South Louisiana, and you want to keep your lawn maintained during these sunny seasons, get in touch with our friend Blake Hebert over at Hebert's Lawn Maintenance, where he says, you grow it, I mow it. 225-485-8022, 225-485-8022 is where you can find Hebert's Lawn and Maintenance, the official lawn and maintenance company of the undisclosed location. Papa Earl's, the fine spice, originating right down here in South Louisiana by our guy Mark Pop Norman. Developed it back in 2018 and won Amazon's Newcomer of the Year in 2019. They pride themselves in having 30% less salt and sodium than the leading brands at the same price point. You can find them locally. Look for Papa Earl's at Rouse's, Calandro's, Mathern's, High Neighbor, and more. True Blue Water, true hydration at its finest. Right now, you're only a few minutes away from getting your 5-gallon water delivered to you, just like we are over here at the UDL. All you got to do is log on to truebluewater.com. That's TRU, bluewater.com. The website's fantastic over at truebluewater.com. You can get your service and find out how quick it is. You can schedule a delivery, even hop on the billing system right there at truebluewater.com. TRU, bluewater.com. Go Chevrolet is proud to announce Go Express Auto Sales, the new used car lot located in the capital city of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, at 11522 Florida Boulevard. Go Express Auto Sales is online at goexpressautosales.com, or you can search them on Facebook and social media at Go Express Auto Sales, the newest addition to the family of Go Chevrolet. Remember, Go Chevrolet is located down in Laplace, Louisiana, but now welcoming aboard Go Express, the new used car lot located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at 11522 Florida Boulevard. Go Flow I.
All right, a little bit before we link up here with Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois. Latest out of College Station, Texas A&M has extended and given a raise to Jimbo Fisher, as Fisher now locked up in College Station through 2030. And the deal will now be worth more than $90 million as he is cleaning up in college football. And Fisher's new deal would keep him 10 years in College Station, running through the 2030 season. Will be worth more than $90 million. Places him second nationally behind Alabama's Nick Saban as the highest paid coaches in college football. Saban received a raise and an extension through the summer that will take him to an average of $10.5 million annually, $10.6 million annually. And he's in Tuscaloosa through the 2028 season. Jimbo Fisher is
how old is Nick Saban?
26 and 10 in 3 seasons. He'll be 77 years old at the end of this contract in 2028.
When does he run out of juice?
Not then.
At 77?
No, I don't think so.
He won't be just out of it? There's this.
I mean, you going to bet against him?
No, that's what's so scary, is that he's going to just be the preeminent force in college football until he's 80 years old. And what is it, Bear Bryant? Joe Pa? Like, he's going to be one of those figures? Do you think he sticks around?
I don't see Saban doing that.
It's because he doesn't look it. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, first off, physically he doesn't look it. His team still performs at such a high level, and
the stress has to be eating at him at some point.
No way.
How?
No way. He's got 7 championships, bro. What are you stressed out about at this
because
point in your career?
He's set a standard for himself that's impossible to beat.
That's fine. Have you seen the last 3 recruiting classes? Each one is the greatest of all time.
It's a bukkake of rings on the table. He doesn't have to do anything.
I mean, he's got the players. I mean, Joe Pa started to slide. Bobby Bowden started to slide at the end because they just didn't have the teams that they had when they became those characters. I mean, they weren't the same type of coaches that they were when they had that type of reputation because their teams weren't as good. Saban's teams are better and as good year in, year out. He's continuously raking up in recruiting. And until that stops, I just don't see a time where he is going to voluntarily walk away from the game. I see him walking away for possibly an administrative role, by some type of role that is maybe above the program. But
AD?
I don't know if it's an AD because he doesn't care about other sports like he does about football.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like, this is exactly where he's supposed to be, but it just... Is it because, like, the way... Does he... I mean, he still coaches the secondary, I would imagine. Like, he's not a... That was his big calling card, his defense coming into the league and, like, you know, cutting his teeth in college football was that he made a headway as a secondary coach and as a defensive, like, you know, that was his calling card. That he was a mastermind in terms of being able to scheme your defense up, and that's what he did. He played defense and let other people in recruit. But has college football changed to the point where he doesn't even have to really... I know he's on the field and I know he's coaching. You see everything that he does. He's barking all of the time. But does he have everybody so set in place in terms of what he's doing schematically that maybe it's easier for him at this point to be able to sit back and look, I just have to recruit.
It's got to be easier because, in my opinion, if you're looking just from 30,000 square feet looking down at their operation, I don't know anybody or I don't know anything as far as firsthand in being there, but I have talked to people who have worked in that organization and who have stayed an extended amount of time in that organization, and guys that still carry over and implement the same ideas and mythology that they do in Tuscaloosa because of their time there. If you look at Billy Napier's program down in Lafayette, I mean, that's Alabama 2.0. I mean, that's exactly the way that Saban runs his operation, is how they're doing it in Lafayette, just on a smaller scale. Now, their resources and financially they are growing, but it doesn't have, obviously, the amount of resources and the amount of money that Alabama does. But if you look at the model, it's identical. It's identical in the organization behind the recruiting meetings, in the way that they evaluate their recruits, into everything ancillarily that goes in around the program: nutrition, weight program, student development, personal development, all of that stuff, fourth quarter program in the weight room. I mean, all of that stuff is just right out the book of Nick Saban's coaching tree. And I think now you've seen him be able to plug and play these guys on the coaching staff, where you think Bill O'Brien's bringing in his offense and saying, like, this is how we're going to do it. No, Saban's saying, this is how we do it. This is the terminology. This is where we've been the last couple of years. Now you come in and you implement your system around these principles. These are the types of guys that we recruited. This is the philosophy. This is the program that we run. You come in, Bill O'Brien, whoever it may be. I mean, like Steve Sarkisian, Lane. I mean, I think Lane Kiffin was probably the one that kind of identified it and set the pace for him and showed him, you're going to have to evolve into this offensively if you want to stay relevant. You're going to have to play this game if you want to still be.
It's almost like he learned from Lane Kiffin a little bit.
Absolutely, he did. Absolutely. I mean, that to me is the difference in Saban and everybody else. He adapts. He changes. Well, he adapts, and he's not intimidated by anybody or any philosophy. You know what I mean? Like, I would say for the longest time that, Les Miles' biggest problem, and even Ed Ogeron to a degree, is sometimes when they hire Miles more, he was scared to hire his successor. He was scared to hire somebody that would be brought in and the room would figure out, oh, well, I mean, this guy knows way more than Les does. Why don't you just let him run the opera? I mean, if you ever brought Lane Kiffin in to Les Miles' team meetings, by the second week of the meetings, Kiffin would be running circles around the entire organization, including the head coach. So Miles knew, I can't expose myself like that. But if he would have been able to adapt and set some type of, just like, this is the course. Yeah, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to operate. I think Saban has done that better than anybody else, and he has been the one that has experienced the most success from it, both personally and from the team standpoint.
It makes me wonder what they're going to do when you think of Saban and how he treated Lane Kiffin to a degree on the field, the yelling and all of that. Like, he would get in his face. There's no way Bill O'Brien's going to do any of that. He's got to be in the booth. Like, he's not going to be on the field with Nick Saban. He's a former NFL head football coach and general manager, and I just don't see him taking an ass chewing from somebody that he looks at as his peer. Like,
what would you think he would do?
I think they're going to put him in the booth so it just doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, it may not happen publicly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you'll never get that visual.
If Saban doesn't, even if he's in the booth, he's not outside of the ass chewing. You know what I mean? Like, Saban doesn't give a damn about Bill. You think Bill O'Brien needs Nick Saban, or Nick Saban needs Bill O'Brien?
No, Bill O'Brien needs Nick Saban. He's at coach's rehab. He's going to the clinic. And also, I think you raised an interesting point, whatever you say about Ed Orgeron. He evolved a little bit, because when you think about, he hired Matt Canada, and he obviously wanted Lane Kiffin, and that deal was kind of done in the dark until it wasn't. And then you have him bring in Matt Canada, and you saw how he couldn't handle somebody that had different ideals than he did, or have like a different offensive game plan. And I think it speaks to his evolution to be able to hire a Joe Brady and then let him just take. I mean, sure, he shoved a lot of it on Steve Ensminger's plate and said, "Look, this is Steve Ensminger's offense," when it really wasn't. Everybody knows that. But for him to be able to take a step back almost and
look at the way he talks about it
cook,
now.
right? Exactly. And obviously it wasn't Steve Ensminger, even though I love Steve and everybody does.
Sure.
That man had a dip in his mouth. It was look at what the hell is he doing?
This is unbelievable.
Keep going, kid.
Yeah.
This is your show.
Yeah.
Ride the horse. But I think there's a little bit of Ed Orgeron there to be able to take a step back from the Matt Canada hiring and then bring in Steve Ensminger to get comfortable and then hire a Joe Brady and let him just cook. To step back and be like, oh, Jesus, this man knows exactly what he's doing. And then you obviously see the regression with the Scott Linehan hire to get comfortable again. But it's that same vein of where Nick Saban is at the pinnacle of the sport to be able to be, I'm so good at this, I don't have to worry about who's underneath me.
I'm not intimidated by anything.
I'm not intimidated by any of these guys. And Coach O is there, and then he's not. He's there, and then he's not.
Kind of tinkers back and forth.
Right, and it's just, I think this might be maybe Jake Peach seems to be a superstar. And so I'll be interested to see how long LSU can hold on to that and how he holds on to somebody that.
Both of them are superstars. Durante Jones
You
is
think
too.
so?
Yeah,
Damn.
I do.
And then that's the next question. Then how do you replace them? You have to be able to if you're gonna hire these cats that are going to you're putting them in a position to succeed essentially. And then if they're going to be gone every 2 years, you can't do a Scott Linehan again. You can't do a Bo Pelini again. You have to be able to find these same people in the same mold where they are going to succeed and leave.
Yeah. You have to plan for that. You have to adapt. Cajun Ready Mix, new sponsor here.
Whoa.
On the Jordy Culotta Show. Cajun Ready Mix
ready.
Concrete provides ready-mix concrete products and services to meet all of your concrete needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, municipal, whatever your needs are, you can get in touch with Cajun Ready Mix Concrete as they are online at CajunRMC.com. We go over to Dallas, Texas, as obviously things down here in South Louisiana very much in peril over the last couple of days. South Louisiana has been rocked by Hurricane Ida, including New Orleans and the surrounding areas like Houma, Thibodaux, Ascension Parish, deep South Louisiana, of course, throughout the fisheries down there were walloped by Hurricane Ida. The Saints have picked up and moved their operation over to Dallas, and we know the relationship between Jerry Jones and Sean Payton, Gail Benson, the ownership
Pledged
group.
a millie.
Yeah, and so did Arthur Blank. So did a couple of owners in the NFL have pledged $1 million to the South Louisiana cleanup. But Nick Underhill runs New Orleans.football. It's the greatest New Orleans Saints site that is out there as far as information goes. If you're not subscribed, Underhill did something the other day. We retweeted it where he put out a promo code giving the option for a membership out there really for free. Was a very great gesture, a kind gesture. I know that that like we said, Nick, yesterday. I don't know how far this stuff goes by just firing up and talking about LSU, UCLA, and the Saints roster. But what we're trying to do is just divert people's mind, energy away from the sadness and the depression of what Hurricane Ida has brought everybody down here, whether it be no power or structural damage or no home or no lights, trees down, whatever it may be. We understand that people are dealing with that. And I know that not on the top of people's mind right now is Saints football, but be able to just go to your site and read it and have that opportunity to do it for free was a really cool thing to do. I appreciate you being here from Dallas on this Wednesday morning, buddy. Good morning. How are you?
We're doing all right. And yeah, you're right, man. I do think that people need a couple minutes of reprieve, to see we got out ahead of it and we're watching the forecast, 10, 11 hours straight. And you just get to a point where you just emotionally really can't take it anymore and you need a minute to get away. So, I think what you guys are doing, what I'm trying to do, it's trivial and it feels extremely trivial at times like this, but it's out there for people who need it. And, I've been hearing back from people that, are thankful to have a little bit of distraction, 30 minutes on a podcast, a couple hours on your show, whatever. I mean, it's just a minute to get away and, you know, think about something else, and hopefully things get back to normal soon. But, you know, it's there if people want it.
No, without question. We retweeted it the other day, and we got a DM from somebody saying that they had been hesitant to join the site, but after reading it, that they were going to subscribe just because of the promotion and just seeing what the site entailed. It's fantastic. NewOrleans.football. You were over in Dallas with the Saints. Just from their perspective, from the organization's perspective, what has the last 4 days been like?
Yeah, it's been a little bit weird. I mean, you know, coming to AT&T Stadium to watch practices is definitely different and jarring. You know, I think the team itself is, you know, I think they're kind of, you know, I don't want to say that they're built for this, but I think some of the stuff that they've been through since 2017, Minneapolis Miracle, the no call in 18, you know, just some of the stuff and some of the hardships that they've had to bounce back from, just this team since 2017. I think that there's some resiliency with them, that they can kind of handle some of these tough times, and there's some mental toughness that's just been ingrained in them that they've had to get. And, you know, I think this is just another thing that they got to overcome. You know, the players, Sean Payton, you know, they all talk about how something like this can kind of actually make you lock in a little bit more and focus a little bit more, as opposed to, you know, being knocked out of your routine and you know, not being able to focus. He kind of feels like getting them in this setting at a hotel. You got all this stuff going on, and it causes people to focus a little bit more. And, you know, I think they got the leaders and guys like Mario Davis, Cam Jordan, Malcolm Jenkins, Teron Armstead, and, you know, even Jameis Winston. I mean, I think that they just have the guys that can kind of set the tone and make sure that everybody's locked in, doing their job, paying attention. And, you know, it's a little bit harder. And, you know, I'm sure over time, if they're out here, you know, they're talking about being away for a month right now. They're going to practice at TCU and use the facilities there. And if there's, you know, some stuff that goes on in conflicts, they can go to SMU or back to AT&T Stadium to get a practice in. But, you know, that's a long time. And you're basically starting your whole entire season on the road. It sounds like week one's going to be in Jacksonville. So they'll be there, then Carolina, then in New England. And then I believe it's supposed to be a home game against the Giants in week 4. So we'll see how that is there. It looks like there's some power coming back slowly into New Orleans. So maybe that, you know, it is possible for that next home game. But it's going to be a trying time for this team for sure.
How creative do they have to be to get to the 53?
You know, I think there's still going to be some more stuff that happens over the next couple of days. I mean, they got 2 kickers on the team. Will Lutz is going to, you know, probably go on IR. That opens up a spot for, you know, maybe bringing Trevor Siemian back. You know, Alex Arma, the fullback, got cut. I'd be surprised if they didn't bring him back. If they didn't have a fullback on the roster, I mean, that would be, it's kind of weird to say this, but it would be kind of a radical shift for them in offensive philosophy, because they are one of the last 4 or 5 teams that really utilizes a fullback, and it's an important position in their offense. So I expect he comes back, and maybe even Chris Hogan could be somebody that comes back. That they liked what he did, and, you know, it's kind of the talk right now. He was told to kind of be, you know, stay on hold. So some of those guys that they cut, they're vested veterans. They have more than 4 years of service time, so they don't have to go through the waiver process. Whereas, you know, other players, you cut them, they have to go through the waiver process. They can get claims. So sometimes what the Saints like to do is kind of put these guys on hold, and then they'll cut somebody else that has to go through the waiver process next week when, you know, teams are already kind of set and they got their roster set, and they're maybe less likely to make a claim and shake some things up unless, you know, they're really sure about that player. So they'll try to sneak some guys through to the practice squad, but there's going to be some changes for sure. And, you know, I think those 3 guys, Siemian, Alex Arma, and Hogan, have a pretty good chance of coming back.
You mentioned Trevor Siemian, and the quarterback race took a big shift last week as Jameis Winston was named the starter for the Saints. One guy that we haven't mentioned a lot during these interviews or during training camp has been Ian Book. What type of camp has he had?
He's had a good camp. He completed 78% of his passes during camp. Siemian was at 64%. You know, granted, there's a little bit of context that's needed there, and, you know, I don't know if Book took as many chances down the field as the other guys, so that jumps that percentage a little bit. But, I mean, he was really accurate. You know, he moves well in the pocket. He has a really good feel for when to run. And, you know, he makes plays on the move. And you saw some of that stuff at Notre Dame, some of that, you know, playground stuff. I think that's just inherent in his game. And when it looks like things are chaotic, he like settles down and, almost plays in slow motion and just, makes plays that other guys really can't make. And there were a few of those during camp. But, if we laid out the top 5 highlights for the quarterback, there's 2 plays that I think he had for sure that would absolutely be in there. And, I think he has a way to go. There's, some maturation that needs to take place, and he needs to get more comfortable with what he's doing. But I would say, I got here in 2014. That was the end of Ryan Griffin, Garrett Grayson. They've had some other guys in here, Joe Callahan. And I'd even throw early Taysom Hill in there. I think Book has, if we're talking about the very first camp for all those guys, I think Book looks like he has more upside than all of them. Can he get all the way to NFL starter? I think that's a very long path. But I think it's extremely possible right now to project, really good backup. And maybe there's room for more growth. But he's definitely way better than, I think any of those guys were immediately when they got here. Now, Taysom Hill grew by leaps and bounds, over his time. And, I thought he got close. He got close to being where he needed to be, but just ultimately to get the NFL starter. But Ian Book has looked good. I think they're excited about him. And, I think there's a possibility for him to really develop here if, he gets the time and continues to do the things he's supposed to do.
You get an opportunity to get a feeling on Taysom Hill after the announcement last week and kind of going forward how and where he fits in?
Yeah, just, kind of secondhand, just as far as how he's taken it, that happened. And then it's crazy. That happened, then Ida hit. And, it was just kind of like this thing that we had talked about for 6 months that seemed so important. It was just kind of omnipresent, just kind of fell to the back burner. Sean Payton talked for 40 minutes one day, didn't get asked about it once. Next day, it's another 30 minutes into it, and he's finally asked about the decision. And it just kind of put into perspective, how, trivial all this stuff seems with all this stuff going on. But, I think Taysom's going to embrace the role that he had before. I'm sure he's disappointed, and, he really wants to be an NFL starter, but that's just not going to be in the cards for him this year. But they're going to move him back into that do-everything role. I think he's going to help out with, some of the injury at tight end, and he'll fall back into that. He'll be a personal punt protector, do the stuff on special teams, and they'll have the package of plays for him, and it's just going to kind of be what it always was for him. And, I wouldn't be surprised if it's even a little bit more and used a little bit more heavily now that, Breeze is out of there. And I think you're probably a little bit more willing to take the ball out of Jameis Winston's hands now and then than you were with Breeze. And, I think that he'll still do a lot, and he'll have a significant impact on this offense. And, they need him in that role. And I think that's kind of the area where, he's best served to help the team. Now, I don't think it was, the decision at all was based on that. I think if he was a better quarterback, they simply would have went with him at quarterback. But Jameis winning that outright and really having a very clean victory and putting Taysom back in this other role, I think is really the best outcome that they could have imagined going into it.
Can you explain the Taysom Hill contract for those that don't know? Because I'm a little confused by it, to be honest. It's got $140 million, all avoidable years. How does this work out with the fact that he's not the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, so all that money it's void, it's fake. He has a 2-year, $21 million contract, 2-year, $20 million. And that's all the real money. They added those on there. It's the voidable years. And it's just when it hits a certain date, they void and they all go away. And the reason that they write those numbers so high is, let's say they want to renegotiate within a year, 11 months and 364 days. At that threshold, if you renegotiate, you can't, the way it's set up, you have to wait a year to renegotiate. And if you do the number higher, that's fine. You can reduce pay, but you can't. I'm explaining this very poorly. But there is a cap purpose. There is a cap purpose for this with the renegotiation, and with the way the numbers are, you have to set them higher so that if you renegotiate, the number comes in beneath it. You can't give a player a raise twice in 1 year. There we go. I got to the word. That's a little bit more understandable. You can't give somebody a raise twice in 1 year. So you can reduce it, but you can't increase it. So if they hit, and they get to there and they want to redo it before it voids and they want to keep him, they can come under that number. But they put the number extremely high because he's not going to get Russell Wilson money. And they did Jameis Winston's contract the same exact way with the same exact numbers. So if they want to renegotiate that before the voids kick in on there, they can do that. And they put those voids in there because, so if your cap number, say, is $10 million and you add 4 voidable years to it, it lowers your cap number to $2.5 million. Then when it voids, that $7.5 million, if it was remaining and it voids at the end of the year, stays on there. So that's just how it works out. So it's just a way to manipulate the cap. Those numbers are fake. And look, I mean, ESPN reported that and they put it out there and they didn't explain it properly. And it's led to this massive state of confusion that everybody thinks he has a $140 million contract. When in fact, this is something they do in basically every single contract with the team. If you go down the list, there's these voidable years for everybody, and the numbers they're written at are just absolutely outrageous because it just gives them the room to go back in and say, hey, let's stop this void. We want to keep you on the team. And they did that with Drew Brees before. So they just make the number absurd, a point where it's not going to be reached, and it just allows them to go back in and fix it.
Let's stay in GM mode. Nick, I have the 2nd overall pick in my fantasy draft tonight that nobody cares about, but would I be a fool to take Alvin Kamara?
I don't think so. I mean, I think especially early in the season, he's going to get a ton of touches and be leaned on to kind of carry the offense more so than, really any other point. And I think it would be a very wise pick. I think he's going to get his touches. And even when Mike Thomas comes back, I think Alvin's kind of reached the point now where you kind of run the offense through him, and he needs to be your main guy, and that needs to be the person you're trying to figure out how to get the ball to more than anyone else. And, I think his role might change a little bit in the passing game. Now that you got a quarterback that, isn't throwing 7 yards or less, I don't think he's going to be standing 2 feet from Jameis on every play like he was with Brees last year, which, up the percentage of passes that went to him. And, those checkdowns are just going to change. But I think Alvin's going to be in a more dynamic role. And I think you can kind of look at 2017 when he was out in the slot quite a bit, and they're sending him down the field, legitimately. Very first game he played, he ran an out and up route down the field, and they targeted him on it. And, those are just things that a lot of running backs don't do. So I think there's going to be some more downfield stuff for him. And, you'll see him on crossing routes and just different ways and a little bit more dynamic usage. But I think that you can probably always bank on him getting those 80 catches, if not more. And, I think this year with Mike being out and
Nick, don't let him go one. Don't let him go first overall. That's enough. That's plenty.
As Nick just alluded to, the NFL has just announced it. It is official, and the Saints just tweeted it out 1 minute ago that the opener, September 12th, with the Saints and the Packers will now be played at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville. So that game will originate from Jacksonville. That will be a 3:25 Central Standard Time kickoff on week 1, September 12th.
Yeah, that kind of stinks for them. Like, I mean, playing that outdoor game is probably not what they wanted. I mean, AT&T would have been the best option for them, or even somewhere indoors like Atlanta, but, that venue isn't available. But they'll have to go out there and kind of sweat it out a little bit. I'm sure they're more equipped to do that than Green Bay, but I mean, I'm sure they would have preferred to be indoors somewhere on turf, and, that's just kind of where they're at with it. At least they're able to play a game, and they found a venue and all that. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of feel like that's, Arizona would have been a better spot for them. I think anywhere indoors, but I'm sure they'll figure it out and kind of get through it. But Jacksonville just doesn't feel like the best spot for that game.
No, it doesn't. But all right, I might be putting you on the spot here, but there was a new footage of Drew Brees coming out with a full head of hair. What is the story on Drew Brees' hair, and do you know anything about that? Because he went from very balding to shaved head to now he's got this luscious mop on top. What do you know?
I mean, I think if, we're looking at it and just kind of being honest about it, when Brees shaved his head last training camp and said he did it because people told him he looked young and then his hair grew in 3 times thicker than it was. I mean, that would kind of be where I pinpoint it. Hey, look, man, if I was bald though and I had money, like, I'd be looking up, I'd show up like Tom Selleck and just kind of, who cares, man? Like, if you don't got to be bald. Yeah, if you don't got to be bald and you can afford the hair, I mean, I would definitely do it.
Nick, what are you watching before
right now?
No, before the before week 1. What is the storylines for Saints camp? I guess it's now training camp is over. Now in preparation, what are some of the things that you're looking at?
obviously, I mean, quarterback's a big one. Secondary, I would go to, cornerback too. Ken Crawley isn't practicing right now. He has a minor hamstring injury. I don't think he's going to be out too long, but that's always, those things always linger sometimes, and it's possible that could maybe jeopardize week one. So I think they'd be okay with Paulson and Debo in that spot, but it is a little bit scary going against Green Bay, and if that's your rookie debut, and even Crawley in that game is a little bit worrisome. So going into it and throughout that game, I think cornerback too is kind of the biggest story for this team moving forward. It seems like there's good news on Marshawn Lattimore right now. Well, no news is good news. It sounds like this can obviously change, so I say it hesitantly, but that has to kind of go through the legal proceeding from how I hear it. He still doesn't have a court date set for that incident in Cleveland with the gun that was allegedly stolen that he was in possession of. So the longer that plays out, the better shape they're in. If he stays on the field throughout the season, I like their odds of being that 10-win team a lot better. And just as this progresses, it seems like there's a little optimism building toward that. So, that's a huge thing for them. Week one, Cesar Ruiz, I think him kind of proving that he can be a solid piece of that offensive line and not giving up a ton of pressure. That's a huge story for them. He didn't give up a pressure during the first 2 preseason games, so that's a huge step forward. Now you got to see it in the game. Marcus Davenport, honestly, like I said, I think he has one of the best camps of anybody on the team. I might even rank him like number one out of everybody. Wow. I don't fully believe it yet, but this is the time to prove it, and he can go into this game. Their starting left tackle is injured, so that's a possible advantage for them. They still have Elgin Jenkins, who was really good as a fill-in last year, but I think Davenport needs to start proving that. So those are the main 3 things I think I'm looking for in that first game. And then obviously, just Jameis Winston's performance. Is he checking down? Now that he's comfortable, does anything change about the way he kind of approaches the position? But I'm fairly confident that we've seen the things out of Winston that you want to see. Even in these games, you'd see him looking down the field and then check down. And I thought one of his best moments in the whole preseason, second game, I think it was 3rd and 16. He checks it down, passes incomplete, whatever. But the fact that he didn't try to push it down the field kind of looked a lot different than Jameis in Tampa Bay, who kind of felt like he had to bail his team out of everything and make every single play. He kind of saw that he was dead going into that snap. There wasn't anything he checks down. I mean, that's significant growth for him, and that's the stuff you want to see. So just seeing him continue to do that going forward would really set a nice foundation for him going into the season.
Glad you're safe, buddy. I know that you guys are over in Dallas for an extended amount of time, but it's good to hear from you, and thank you for the time as always this morning.
Yeah, you guys as well, and everybody listening, just stay safe, and hopefully things get back to normal as quick as possible.
Yes, sir. We'll be tapping in next Wednesday. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, there's Nick Underhill checking in this morning from Dallas, as New Orleans now going to kick off Week 1 in Jacksonville, September 12th, versus the Jaguars. It'll be a 3:25 start for New Orleans. Interesting in hearing that theory on Jameis and pushing the ball down the field, because Mike Martz was in town a couple of days ago. Martz, of course, the architect of the greatest show on turf. Kurt Warner, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Marshall Faulk. What was it? Azir Hakim was a stud. And that was built around a lot of pushing the ball down the field, right? I mean, they would pop the top off of you just because they'd set you up with Marshall Faulk, and then they had 2 speedsters on the outside, and Holt and Bruce, and they would just run right by you. And Warner had, he had just a beautiful arm, threw a beautiful football.
It was built on bagging groceries.
Yep.
That's how he
canned
got
goods,
strong. To
canned goods. But I wonder the influence now that you have a guy who can throw the ball down the field, how much you ask him to do that. Because I thought that the Jacksonville game, that was beautiful to see. Just New Orleans playing over the top of defenses rather than counting on their scheme and their players, Alvin Kamara, Mike Thomas, to play underneath the defense. And now with Winston being able to pop the top, just because of his athleticism and his arm strength, I wonder how much they ask him to play that role, knowing that it's kind of a razor's edge of, hey, he could fall in the trap of he sees something that he doesn't see and try to make it fit into a window that's just not there.
I do think you have to temper your expectations as a Saints fan if you think they're going to harken back to the days of 2006 Saints offense or 2010 Saints offense, even whenever you had Drew Brees going deep to Devery Henderson all of the time. You're like, look at this. Or when they brought Ted Ginn in for the first time. I think that you have to be ready for a game where there's going to be 2 or 3 interceptions, because I don't think you can just coach that out of somebody. I think Jameis is going to Jameis. That's really what he does. And there's going to be beautiful throws like you saw against, which essentially won him the starting job against Jacksonville, where he goes 9 for 10 for 2 touchdowns, and they're both, it seemed like, was 60 yards in the air for a touchdown, and the other one, he dropped them both in a bucket.
Yeah.
But with the good also comes the bad with Jameis Winston. Like, I don't think you'll coach that out of him in year 1. So I think there's going to be some times where you see 2 or 3 interceptions in a game. And for Saints fans, that's something you're not used to seeing. You've never seen, if you're a Drew Brees, advocate, and that was when you started watching the Saints, he never did that. He never made the throws that made you scratch your head. He may do one a season. But with Jameis Winston, there's going to be those times where you're watching a Monday night game and you're like, oh my God, what the hell did he just do? That's going to happen. Like, it might not be to the extent of a 30 for 30 season like he had a few years ago, but I want people to be prepared for what Jameis is and what he might do in a game. He might throw for 5 touchdowns, but I still think that invariability of him throwing 3 interceptions is still there. You can't really get rid of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, you're going to have to take the good with the bad with Jameis,
Yeah,
I think, to start.
yeah.
But the good has outweighed the bad early on. I mean, very much. I think that what Nick points out there is dead on when you talk about just kind of his progression as a quarterback. I mean, now playing under Peyton, just to see that it's not there. Let me play underneath and be safe. Daily, we're brought to you by...
Especially with a guy like Kamara down there. Like,
Yes.
just check it down, brother. You're good. We're good. We're good
Yes.
here. He can get you 8, 10, 12, 50. Like, he could break one. So I feel like Jameis has never really been in such a situation like he is now, where there seems to be weapons everywhere, and he's coached a little bit differently. Like, it's hard to make that argument after he was with Bruce Arians, and you see what Tom Brady did. But it seems like Tom Brady changed that offense a little bit to where, like, it wasn't Bruce Arians exactly calling the plays anymore. Byron Leftwich, they were very much working with Tom Brady and his mindset, as opposed to Jameis and just saying, look, this is the play we're going to run. A lot of deep outs where those are very vulnerable and can be picked off. So I think that Jameis might be in the perfect spot, but there's still going to be some Jameis moments.
GoFlow IV Spa Health and Wellness Center brought to you, brings you the Jordy Culotta Show every day. Remember, online, GoFlowIV.com, GoFlowIV.com. Get in touch with them about all of their services, including their memberships. Baton Rouge's premier medical spa specializing in IV hydration with treatments with vitamin infusion. They are a medical spa that specializes in that stuff. You can find them on Jefferson Highway. You're down, your energy levels suck right now. You probably can't sleep because of the stress of whether it be power being out, structural damage, trees down in the yard, no school for the kids until Tuesday, whatever it is. Get over to GoFlow IV. Get the medical spa treatment over there with the IV hydration and the vitamin infusion, and let them take care of you today. GoFlowIV.com, GoFlowIV.com online. Get your membership, 3-month, 6-month annual memberships available. Tell them you heard it here on the Jordy Culotta Show. We'll be back and close it out here on this special edition, this Wednesday edition. Just kind of bouncing around times. I appreciate y'all bouncing with us and finding us, liking, sharing, commenting on what we have going on. We'll be back with you 7 to 9 tomorrow. I don't know if I'm opposed to keeping this thing kind of bouncing around, and some days you go 7 to 9, some days you go 3 to 5, some days you go to 7 to 9 in the morning at night.
Maybe
Yeah.
a little nightcap.
I don't hate it. We're flying out to L.A. tomorrow. We will get you set up for that. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7 to 9 a.m. though to get you before we get out of here. We'll have that for you. So
7 to 9 tomorrow.
So 7 to 9 tomorrow. 7 to 9 tomorrow. Hopefully the UDL can get some power back in the next 24 hours, 16 hours or something here, and we can get back over to our home base. But the bunker to the bunker has been phenomenal. Great work
Thank you, sir.
by Lizzie.
Thanks.
Not yet time to ask for a raise, but fantastic work. I would put this on the list. I would definitely on the list at some
It's
point.
on the list of one. That's the only thing I have on the docket.
Yeah. A bullet point.
Yeah, Sean was making fun of me and my brother.
Finally, we can make a bullet point in black.
Exactly.
In black
That's what
ink.
he was saying. He was like, well, kind of made up for your, excuse the language, for your fuck up of deleting the YouTube channel. He's like, you finally got a skid on the wall. And I was like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, we've been in business for 7 months.
It's the only good thing I have going for me right now.
No, great stuff.
Appreciate
this is
it.
fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody over at the bunker to the bunker. Hopefully, everybody out there is safe, sound, listening to this. I know that it sucks right now. It's hot as hell outside.
Isn't that crazy? It's just like that. It just turned to where now you don't want to go outside again.
Hell's Kitchen outside right now.
So
bro.
much water.
And just
baking you. It's a sous vide of
feeling
people.
of just it all out there, and you've probably got bad smells inside of your powerless home. I know that I do, just because of the stuff and the heat that is in there. I had to clean up everything in the refrigerator, threw away everything in the icebox, threw away everything in the refrigerator.
Well, I'm surprised you had anything in there. You just leave it out.
Well,
Yeah.
didn't take as long as probably most people out there.
You want some more deer and some venison tacos?
I hated to throw those away, man. What a successful hunt that was. To a place that I'm now banned for life.
Did that was your last memory?
My sister's place, bro. She will never let me back.
You don't have your tags.
I
You
don't have a
your
license, dude. Said nobody. I'm just kidding out there in wildlife.
Oh, yeah, right.
Saints opener in Jacksonville. That is right, TJ. Tony Jr., who is inside of the bunker. Thanks for everybody for being out there, man. Hopefully this is a nice little diversion for you. Had over 100 people watching the entire time, so we did a
pop up.
Okay.
No,
pop-up,
no.
And when were you online, JordyCulottaShow.com?
Yes.
Sweet.
No, I don't think we did a social post. We should have done that probably. But
semantics.
Jack he said they were, the house was open last night. So he was saying, he goes, I just woke up. I was working till 5 a.m.
Good times on a college campus during these days, bro.
This is what
this is what you live for if you're slapdicks like us. I mean, usually we would not have gone to class the second week of school. Even if we were on just the natural schedule. But since everybody's going to be called off, you're kind of in our world now. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You're kind of functioning in our world. We weren't going to go. They hand out the syllabus the first month, don't they?
Yeah, but that's what I thought.
For sure.
But for them to be able to...
And now the bars are open. You're still kind of outside of that periphery.
School
where
just started, so you got to see some people. Perfect time to go out because you got your friendships back. Everybody's in
Reputations aren't set yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
but totally fucked this
yes,
up.
that's right. That's right.
But like the initial syllabus week and being able to, because it brings everybody back into town. It brings everyone back to LSU, back to campus, because school is supposed to start. And then you have a hurricane. It's the perfect situation if you want to be a slapdick and be like, all right, well, let's just go to the bar because school's canceled.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you do.
Everybody's in, right?
Yeah. And you don't care if you have power or not. Like, just go to the bar. It is an unbelievable, and it happens to every class. Like, I remember whenever I was in school and this happened, you just go, well, we're going to...
Oh, well, you're good for one in the fall and usually one for the winter.
Exactly.
I mean, the freeze that'll come in late January, early February is bound to shut you down for a 2 or 3 day stretch where I can flex again.
Yeah, the PMAX Open, LSU, Kentucky,
right. We're good. We're good. We're good.
Just froze everything over. It's like, well, we're still going to the basketball game, right?
Absolutely. Kentucky's in town.
Kentucky.
I mean, we
won.
watch Karl Anthony Towns every day of the week, can you?
LSU wins, and you have people doing donuts in the parking lot on ice.
Who was on that Kentucky key? That was not Cat.
No, there was not Karl Anthony Towns, but it might. They were good.
They were real good.
They were good.
They
LSU
were really
should not have won.
Was that Terrence Jones in them?
And them boys.
I mean, that crew.
Stu Gotts.
I mean, that
John
those teams.
Calipari and them boys.
Terrence Jones was one of my favorite Kentucky players. I think he played for the Pelicans for a while.
I think he did too. But I remember we were trying to drive. We drove there, and then we're trying to go to Tigerland over. People were walking up to where the train tracks are and sliding down and just falling down, and you just couldn't get over that little hump. And that was like the barometer if you could go to the bar or not. It wasn't the barkeep or the people that work the door. It was just like a little bit of ice. If you were too drunk and you couldn't get up, it's like, I guess I got to turn around and go home.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Who's driving?
Who's driving? I like it here.
All right, man. Have a good day. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning, 7 to 9 a.m.
We can do that.
Either from the bunker to the bunker or from the bunker. So,
It's going to be from here. I'm not moving all this stuff again. I'll do it over the weekend.
all right, perfect.
All right.
We'll see you here tomorrow morning.